And the Premier is promising that politicians will share at least some of the burden in Thursday's budget with a pay freeze. While it's one of many savings measures to be announced, the Treasurer is doing his best to find a silver lining.
The Treasurer is convinced South Australia is walking a golden path to prosperity. He says the resources sector will create 30,000 jobs within 15 years, which is why this week's budget will excuse companies exploring for gas from paying royalties for 5 years.
Can we afford not to? They're taking big risks, so a 5-year deferral is only proper. We get the money back. It's not a royalty holiday, it's a deferral.
Those sort of inducements and incentives will make the difference between where Santos chooses to drill a well.
But the largesse is in short supply for what will be a belt-tightening budget.
There will be a wage freeze for all politicians, and it will be extended a bit further than that.
I always agree with the Premier, Tom.
That pay freeze looks set to extend into the public sector, but the Treasurer's playing coy.
We're investing in South Australia's future. We're keeping our election commitments in full.
But just whether a previously forecast budget surplus constitutes a commitment remains to be seen.
Do you consider the surplus a promise?
Absolutely. I think the government's metrics are commitments we've made, and we'll be doing all we can to try and keep those promises.
South Australians are just not going to believe the commitments in relation to this government's capacity to manage the budget.
The Greens smell a rat too. Walker Corporation, contracted to build a new car park under the Festival Plaza, is trying to block the release of plans in the District Court.
We have a right to know, as the public, what's going on with the future of this area.
Private companies and private consortiums have every right to protect their finances and what they're doing.
The Treasurer says, watch this space.
We'll have some money set aside to try and upgrade the car park, and more to say about it on Thursday in the state budget.
And live now to political reporter Tom Richardson. Tom, does that mean we'll see more new developments on the riverbank?
Yeah, well, the government's certainly keen to develop the area, but it sees the key as trying to encourage as much private sector investment as possible. We know the Premier's recently returned from a series of meetings with Sky City in New Zealand, and the government's certainly desperate for the casino and others to start building as soon as possible. There is very little public money in the kitty. Tom Koutsantonis clearly preparing to blame the federal coalition's cuts for some of his budget's shortcomings, but as the opposition points out, Labor has promised a budget surplus for the last 7 years and only delivered one in that time, and for all of that time, it's almost all of that time, it's been a federal Labor government in Canberra. Back to you.
Thanks, Tom.